Hello everyone, welcome to the advanced training track of our Data People Summit. My name is Zuzana Vitisková. I'm senior consultant here in Ataccama, and I have more than 7 years of experience designing solutions using Ataccama tools. Our topic today are data quality and data governance events, and how to use them for creating custom notifications in our Ataccama One platform. So our agenda for today. We will start with a look at notification handler component, which allows us to create custom responses to predefined event. We will have a look how it works in general and a bit of theory around it. Then we will define custom notification use case, build it together, and see how it works in a live demo. In the end, we will briefly discuss other possible applications of custom events. So let's start. In order to be able to efficiently work with custom events, we need to understand two topics. First of them is our metadata model in one. This is something which we need to be able to see our technical names of our objects, so terms, business terms, and so on, and to understand the granularity on which we can work with our custom events. The second prerequisite is our orchestration server, which is part of practically any Ataccama deployment. It is a place which takes care of processing of the technical workflows, technical scheduling, or other orchestration stuff like online services. It is a place from which we will run our custom notifications as well. It is well known for DQIT and RDM users as a place where validation services are running. In this session, you can notice that we have two meanings of the word notifications. One of them is a message which we receive in the application in our email when some data quality situation happens. It is something which is configured directly in our web application in the front end. So it can be if a quality in my monitoring project is below some threshold, let me know. This standard in application notifications remains there. Today, we focus on more general meaning of the word, catching custom events, getting technical notification about custom events, and running some custom reactions to them. So how does it work from the high-level flow point of view? First thing is some event in one. It is some published operation. So it can be creation of the new catalog item. It can be that the term was assigned somewhere, technically or manually. Some rule was deleted altogether. Values which are describing some object or some metadata are updated. Or a more technical situation like profiling process finished. Anything of it can be our event. When that specific event happens, a notification handler is activated, gets information about that specific event, and triggers some response. Triggers a technical workflow or a shell script. The response can start with checking some conditions. It is typically our Ataccama plan or component. So it can check whether the kind of the event is the one we want to react to. It can do some active reaction like sending email or reaching API. It can communicate back to R1, to the MMN, and the assigned time or set some access there. We see that we have a lot of options. All power of our desktop is available for creating our custom actions. We may want to log it somewhere and so on. From technical point of view, there are three actors here. First is our one, or the metadata management module running behind it, which provides a standard event handling API. It supports operation like registering a new listener, getting the notification about the event, or acknowledging that the notifications were processed. The good thing for this session today is that our orchestration server takes care of all these technical steps. So as a user, I only provide a small configuration. I say which type of event I want to catch. So it can be my term was created, or I can say that I care only about a specific catalog item identified by its ID or a specific parent and changes on its children. Then I decide which action to take. So typically triggering a technical workflow. And I provide a parameterization for batching. So how many events will be part of one reaction process. And that's it. So let's see it in a real world. So my case I will build now is whenever a term for review is assigned somewhere, send me an email. Last slide. Before we start building the solution, I just wrote down all the steps which we will need to take. So we will start with getting to our MMM and checking what is actually the event we want to catch. And then we will switch to the desktop and see how to enable notification section in the server config, creating a specific notification handler file, connecting with some technical workflow, passing the parameter to the component, which filters the situations and actually sends the email. And as I promised, seeing everything running together in one live demo. Okay. So which event I will want to listen for? I have my security terms here, and I created a new term for a review. How it looks in the metadata model. If I search for term, I see many different objects which are dealing with terms in some sense. If I have a look for the term itself, I see that I have my name, abbreviation, business definition, assigned validation rules. I would use this object if I wanted to capture creation or deletion of a specific term. In this case, I care about how my term gets assigned to a catalog item. So I will care about my term instance. Let's have a look how it looks on the catalog item metadata model. In the catalog item, I see I have an array of object term instance. And this is what I will care about, where a new term instance is created, which means the term is assigned somewhere. I will get a notification in my technical event handler, and I will be able to decide whether to send an email based on it or not. Now I will switch to my desktop, and we'll do the rest of the steps. To not need to skip between the presentation and the desktop many times, we have here my small cheat sheet, which describes the steps which we will need to take one by one with some details. So you can always have a look when I'm talking about something, what are the points prepared here. First thing, to be able to run my orchestration server with my custom changes, I needed to set some environment for it. I need to decide which orchestration server I want to use. As I said, orchestration server is part of standard deployments of Ataccama. But for the session today, I decided to use the one which is part of my desktop in workflow tutorials. Workflow tutorials are a great project which is available with every instance of the desktop. If you don't see it, or if you change it or delete it and need a fresh copy, just go to new project and workflow tutorials to create a new fresh copy. And I definitely recommend to have a look around it if you are not familiar with it. It comes with a set of technical workflows, which we can use as example schedulers, and most importantly, a runnable instance of our orchestration server, which runs on my local environment. So this is my orchestration server running on my local host. It started by a set of scripts which are in my bin folder, and that's exactly what I did. And it's configured by a server config and a runtime config pair of files which are describing the technical setup. Actually, we will have a look into one of them in a minute. So, as I said, workflow tutorials are the orchestration server of my choice for this section. And and on top of my notification handler, which I will manually add there come with predefined technical workflows and online and schedulers. So first thing, I need to enable my server component, notification handler server component. So my admin center, my orchestration server, will know that it should deal with this role as well. I started from the documentation and added a section here, which we can see it is very similar to how my technical scheduler and workflows are already enabled. Here I say that I want to look for individual notification handlers in this folder, and they will have a prefix. They will be named N1 in my environment to follow with the best practices of the orchestration server. I decided that I will persist my results and logs in files. But if I wanted to do it for production, I would probably switch both the notification handler and workflows to the database persistence, as I said, for a real world project. Everything will be stored like the logs and temp files in my notification resources folder, which I just created next to everything else in my workflow tutorials. So it's the folder which I have here. If you have some other example, you might notice that individual tags are a bit shifted or rearranged. Just bear in mind that it is an XML file, so it doesn't matter whether I have my resource folder as a part of the component definition or whether I would have a specific XML tag for it here. All those options are technically equivalent. So now I will have my section for notification handlers in the orchestration server, and I need to actually create some handler. So I have a file here, and just to make it a bit more relatable, I will open my scheduling task as well, and we can see how it is very similar to something you might already know. So I have a small XML file which says what it does, schedule or create a notification handler. I have a description which will be used in the orchestration server to see what this one is doing, whether it's task enabled or disabled, which workflow will be triggered where my event hits. How to deal with variables. Here I will mention that every notification comes as a variable for our technical workflow. So it can come in either CSV or JSON format. And the example or like the metadata are it is ID of the event, timestamp, status, whether it was published, deleted, created, which entity type, so my term instance, and what was the entity ID, GID from one. Here in the server name, I say which Ataccama 1 instance I want to connect to. I need to provide the details in my runtime config file, the same way I would use any external database or any other resource used for my orchestration server. And here in the subscription details, I actually provide the configuration of what will be my notification. So I say I want to listen for 10 instances, new 10 instances. I decide whether instance is created by me, the same user who is used for the interaction in these notifications, will be part of the event or not. I decide parameters for batches and acknowledgement. In this case, if I provide only one parameter, I'm saying that 5 events can go together, but this setting can be more adjusted for a real world project when we can deal with batching, acknowledging, and running several instances of the response workflow in the same time using the standard tools of our orchestration server. The last part here is subscription ID, which is something which is actually generated by my orchestration server. So if I do this connection for the first time, I don't provide this parameter, and it will be filled for me by automated process. So this is my notification handler file, which says every time a term instance has an published operation, send this information to my custom notification workflow to deal with it and decide on further actions. The technical workflow, custom notifications EVA, which is triggered from there, is actually a very simple one. It just calls my component. What I wanted to show here is that it is actually taking the parameters from my event handler. So here input variable events is the way how the parameters get inside, and then then they are passed to the component. So custom notification component is where all the work is actually happening. Yeah, so once more, double click on Canvas if you want to see the parameters of this technical workflow. And now the component. So what I do here, I use a technical beginning to kick the processing, because I don't read data from any file or from database. I just generate one record, which gets the parameter from workflow. So what's happening here? I have my field mapped as a parameter to the map as a parameter. It takes whatever is coming in the field events from the workflow and have it available for the rest of the processing. As I said earlier, we can have several notifications in one event, several different events batched together. So in that case, I would want each of them to be on one line to separate them, and I will parse those fields to independent columns, independent attributes to be able to work with them separately. Those text files are just for my verification, but the main part which is happening is actually in this lower line. So then I filter which type of action I'm looking for. So in this case, I'm looking for an assignment of a term, which means that the new term instance was created. And I interact with my MMN, I can ask about more details. In this case, I ask about what is the name, so I can decide whether it is the term I care about or not. So if the newly assigned term is actually mine for review, I proceed to sending an email. In general, this component can do many different things. So let's summarize some of them. We can do some filtering based on the received events. We can query our metadata management module for more details, like names, parents, details in general. Then we can take some action to write into some files, send mail, read some API, or we can actually trigger some processing or update values back in MMN, depending on what our case is. We have good experience with running it in big scale. We were reacting or creating each new term or each new catalog item. So I would say the performance is generally okay. If you, as a reaction, do some changes in an MMM, then it's might be relevant to think about grouping publish operations if possible, but it's just like a technical mention. I would say that for some MVP, you don't need to care about it at all. And now we finished all our steps. So actually, we are ready to run our live demo. So once more, what do we want to see? Here in my orchestration server, now I see my notification workflow, but I actually care about my custom notification events. So it's running, it's connected to my instance of one, and every time when it is triggered, it spins a new execution row in execution history. It takes a new instance. It triggers my workflow, so I would be able to follow all the steps. What I actually want to get in this demonstration is an email notification. So here is my email folder where I'm wanting to get my new email notifying me about the change which we are just about to do. And as I said, my change will be assigning the term for a review to some catalog item. In my catalog, I can see that some of the catalog items were already marked because I used my for review as a security term. It has different color than standard business terms, so it's nicely visible. And let's apply it to the mainframe export. I will search for my for a review term and apply it here. At this moment, nothing happened yet. No email is sent. The notification handler is not triggered because the change is not published yet. It's now just a draft, which is something which is between me and MMM. When I will actually publish it, at that moment, I expect all the other parts to be triggered. So my orchestration server will get the information, trigger notification handler, trigger workflow, run component will send email. Okay, let's publish. It can take a moment. It didn't take that much this time. So what I want to see is my notification handler. And more importantly, I will want to see something in my email inbox. So I see here that the workflow was running, and I see that a new email came. It's telling me that a table was marked as for review, and I can click to the links and see which specific table was marked, or just go to my occurrences of my for review term and see on which places it is assigned at this moment. And that's it. So we've seen a simple case where assignment of a new term instance, assigning term somewhere, is causing some reaction. In this case, filtering and sending the email. But you might be already thinking, what are other options? What other things you can do with our events? And there are many. So just to name some, we are able to configure a process which will assign domains terms based on the attribute names. So every time when a new attribute was created on any catalog item, a process will check its name and interact with our MMM to apply some terms on it. We can switch the reaction. So instead of sending email, we can call some API, do some Teams, Slack, or Jira integration. As I said, all power of our desktop is available for our reactions. We can use this approach to automatically grant some permissions where new objects are created based on some metadata in them. And there's a wide range of cases where we will use the custom event to verify consistency or inconsistency in the metadata in one. Some resources for you. So there's a special group in our Ataccama community when we can discuss this topic. And I can definitely recommend you our documentation. There's a section for a technical description of the API, a section for enabling the notification handler as a part of the server component, and actual creation of the notification handler informations, those NOTH files. Okay, so thanks for your attention and see you in our community group.